This is Michael Ostrolenk. Welcome to Radio, where we explore individual and social transformation through collaborative action. I'm a psychotherapist with a transpersonal and somatic specialization. I'm also a transpartisan social entrepreneur and head instructor at SEALFIT's Unbeatable Mind Academy. Today's show is sponsored by Casper Scafidi, a rolfer and bodyworker who studied biodynamic and mechanical craniosacral therapy, visceral manipulation, neuromuscular and myofascial processes. Casper works out of the DC metro area, and you can learn more about Casper's work at www.casper, C-O-S-P-E-R, Scafidi, S-C-A-F-I-D-I.com. Our guest today is Erwan Le Corre. Erwan is French-born, 48, is recognized as the godfather of natural movement, a philosophy, practice, and lifestyle based on humanity's ancestral roots, as well as founder of MovNat, a forward-thinking approach to fitness that educates people to be physically capable in the real world. He's also author of the best-selling book, The Practice of Natural Movement, Reclaim Power, Health, and Freedom. Erwan lives between the mountains of New Mexico and a tiny fishing village of Mexico with his wife, Jessica, and their 3 young children, Feather, Eagle, and Sky. Hey, Erwan, how you doing, buddy?
Hey, Michael, I'm doing great today. How are you?
I'm good. It's good to see you.
Good to see you too.
And I appreciated the view behind you, although our viewing audience can't see it necessarily, but the fishing village you're in is beautiful. What great scenery.
I was to flip the laptop the other way around, that you would see a beautiful vista of the ocean, which is like blue sky and lush green jungle there. It's beautiful.
Good for you, man. So, as I mentioned, you're the author of an amazing book. And as I said, it's a best-selling book, The Practice of Natural Movement, Reclaim Power, Health, and Freedom. And I'm curious, the 3 values you promote in the title of the book, Power, Health, and Freedom. Can we start there? And why are those values so important to you and part of your ethos?
They are fundamental values. Power is obviously your personal power to achieve what is it that you want in your life, to experience what is it that you want in your life. And so that feeling of empowerment, when it comes from within, comes from yourself, as opposed to expecting it from some other group or policy or government or not, is the first form of power everybody needs to have that experience of life that you, on your own terms, that you choose. Health is what supports it all. Health is what supports you to stay alive, not only to be alive, but to really enjoy life at its fullest, and also to have the resource, the physiological, the health resource to bring about your projects and to have the kind of experience that you're looking for. It's the pursuit of happiness on your own terms. So you need to be healthy to sustain and to have the power to sustain that pursuit of happiness, which is in fact freedom. Nobody's going to tell you how to pursue happiness, what is going to make you personally happy. Nobody should dictate that for you, but also nobody is going to do it for you, to choose it for you. It's everybody's personal quest. How do I make myself happy and satisfied in life? Now, that's the freedom that we all have to determine what particular experience of ourselves in our life, of the world, we choose, and then to manifest it, to bring it to our own reality. So that freedom, when you are healthy and where you are empowered, you have a much greater ability to actually reach that experience. So that's why it matters. It's all intertwined values.
And those 3 values, it's really interesting to hear you describe them and define them for us, are kind of ground values for you looking back at your life and the life you've lived to date. Because you've had some, pretty amazing experiences that have led you to create MovNat, to have a whole lifestyle, natural movement lifestyle movement that you're operating within. Talk to us about what led you down this path originally.
Um, it's a circumstance. It's a combination of early childhood and teenagehood circumstances which I did not choose. We don't really choose any of that, right? What family we're born in, our ethnicity, our social status, or that which of our parents, and what is it that their value system that they share with us that sometimes they impose on us, or lack thereof. Actually, all of that is when you're a child, you don't decide any of that. You're like a little sponge, right? My background, the circumstances that influenced me is that I lived close to nature, really close to nature, and my parents were always going on hikes. We were going on hikes, and my dad was pushing me to actually climb trees and scale up boulders and crawl, and he was doing it with me and with our siblings. So he was showing an example, and he was consciously or not pushing us to become stronger, more capable, more brave, more self-confident through that natural movement behavior and experience. That was a beautiful thing. So that's a major influence right there, because not only that's what my parent would encourage me to do, but that's also what my own nature wanted. I loved it. I wanted that. Now it was blissful to me. It was empowering to me. I felt free. So here's the thing. Um, when we're a little child and then a teenager, we don't choose much. And then we start to form ideas, a vision for who we want to be and what kind of experience, what kind of life we want to have. And that is where um, a lot of us, if not all of us, pretty much feel somehow bullied by the limitations of conventions, of social conventions, right? Sit, behave, don't talk like this, talk like that, don't choose this, choose that, don't think like this, think like that all the time. And there's not a lot of place for what I call natural movement, actually, which is the whole scope um, of our ancestral, universal, evolutionary, instinctual, physical, movement skills. We're talking about hiking, jumping, landing, balancing, crawling, rolling, getting up, getting down, hanging and climbing, lifting and carrying, throwing, catching, swimming, some, self-defense, grappling, striking, all of that. We all do it universally across the planet. All young kids do it without any instruction. What happens quickly is that it's taken away from us. It's not something that fits the agenda of society, schools, education, our parents and all. It's very, we are not growing up, for the most part. We're not growing up in nature. We can't go barefoot. We're not allowed to get dirty. We're not allowed to take risk, to go play, to explore nature, to play with mud. All of that is, for the most part, is taken away from us, especially with young generations that are mostly growing up indoors in urban environments or suburban environments and given electronics.
Yeah.
And having to sit all day, right? So that's a reality. So what led me to do what I do, it was not just a love for movement and a love for nature. It was also a big ass frustration with the model of what it is to be a grown-up and reasonable. I didn't buy into that model. I didn't buy it. I had no desire to join that army of reasonable people who live a reasonable life. And that is why I seeked an alternative lifestyle, alternative mindset, alternative value system. My whole life was a resistance. My childhood, my teenage time, and then my early adulthood, and all the way until now I'm pushing 50, has been a resistance to that model, and to, as a constructive alternative, to build a constructive alternative to that ultimately I believed had enough value and was enough systematic to be taught, to be shown, to be spread, and to be shared with others.
You know, one of the many reasons you and I get along, we have a similar
It's true.
dislike or questioning of the conventional system. But I'm curious, was there a point in your youth or teenage years that you were conscious about your dislike of the conventional system, and that you started building an alternative model, methods, maps, and practices? Or was it a slow process that evolved over time? Or
It was a process, but a process that started again very early. Um, I remember going on hikes with my family and like extended family, grandparents and uncles and aunts and cousins and things. And fortunately, they would let me say walk on a wall on the edge of something where, and they trusted me in that sense. That was great. But at the same time, they did not participate. And I noticed that they never participated. And I noticed that they were not into the kind of things that I was into. And I guess every child in the world realizes that pretty quickly about their parents, except say when their parents want to partake in playing video games or doing some kind of, of a game, or, but not that much when it comes to being exuberant with your movement, hanging and swinging and climbing and doing that. That's not really a behavior that adults and parents and family really engage in. So yeah, very early on, I was looking a little, or literally in a skeptic fashion, looking at those adults and thinking to myself, they're not moving much. They just want to think and talk. That's all we don't want to do. That was not really interesting to me, given that I was seeing opportunities for fun, for movement through fun everywhere, and I just wanted to do that, not to be restricted. And later on, I realized that adults were always sitting, always serious, always putting limitations there and there, not looking very healthy to me, not looking very happy to me. Like I start to sense the diversity of predicaments, of ailments, of afflictions that most of the adult world is dealing with. I was understanding that they were taking all kinds of medication for all kinds of mysterious illnesses that I didn't have, and that were pretty much all were on some kind of medication. They were always sitting. Some of them looked depressed, always serious, never laughing. So I that example, I was just naturally suspicious of it, and there's no way that I'm supposed to be like this too. When I grow up, I'll be different. So yeah, I believe I had my inner voice was already working and thinking I'm gonna do things different. And not surprisingly, as I became a teenager, and obviously we know teenagers are rebellious, I wasn't rebellious in the sense of doing crazy things and putting myself in troublesome situations, but I was definitely rebellious in my outlook on what is life, what is adulthood, what is a good life. And then I started to dig into alternatives, start to read books. I got interested in yoga, in breathing, in martial arts, in philosophies, Western philosophies, Eastern philosophies, all kind of things.
were
When
there
I was a little boy, I read all these books, Jack London, Adventures, history. A lot. I read a lot of history books about history of piracy, history of Hannibal, and you know adventures. And I was, wow, that's the kind of life I want.
so when I'm hearing you say that there was an inner drive to question the conventional system You started
Yes.
playing outside of that system. You read a lot
Yeah.
of books, Eastern and Western philosophy, practice yoga, meditation.
Stoicism, Buddhism, you name it.
Were there any mentors along the way that you worked with to learn new things, or is it mostly through books and experimentation?
I would say it's a good question. I would say my first mentor, it was relatively limited. It was my karate teacher.
Nice.
Um, I started karate at 15, and he wasn't especially, let's say, stimulating me at a philosophical level, but the karate, the principle that I learned were so had such a positive influence in my life, and actually played such an important role even in the way I've designed my method. Because what I've learned with karate, which are principles that you find in every martial art, the principles of deliberate movement, always seeking efficiency, the principles of impeccable positions, timing, sequences of movements, and finding efficiency in creating tension and yet relaxation, and all of those are ways to learn and ways to teach that are common to every martial art, and that are totally part of my method of teaching. If you want, the what I teach is the martial art approach to learning all the natural movement skills that are universal to humans. So if you think that you can learn to make a punch or a kick efficient, then whereas anybody has a basic ability to throw a punch or to throw a kick, but not about that doesn't turn you into a martial artist. Kids can throw kicks and punch, or even an old person could do that. It would not be pretty, it would not be very efficient, but it's a universal ability, right? It's a natural movement. So what is it that a martial art does? Is teaching you the most efficient techniques to do it. Well, if you apply that rationale and that reasoning to all aspects of natural movement, then you understand that you can learn to breathe efficiently, you can learn to run efficiently, you can learn to move efficiently in all these natural ways, to climb efficiently, to move on all fours efficiently. Every technique, even the simplest movement, can be done inefficiently or quite efficiently. And we demonstrate that all the time, and we teach this to people all the time. And they're very surprised that movement that they take for granted, they either cannot do at all, or they cannot do it in the way they assume they can do it. They actually, we show them efficiently, and they're like, oh my God, my movement really is not that good compared to it. So we're the martial art of natural movement, basically, like mixed martial arts of natural movement.
So I will confess to being one of those people. I got certified in your system, and I got to tell you, the first day I'm like, I'm athletic. I trained in the martial arts for decades and still fit and all that stuff, and I'm like, I can do this stuff. And Jeff, who's my instructor, he's like, let me see you crawl. I'm like, I know how to crawl, and he's like, let me see you walk and run and lift, carry, throw. Like my technique was horrible. And it was amazing for me to recognize basically what you're saying is like, I could do it, but not properly based on, gravity and my musculature and bone structure and stuff like that. So just learning the basic movement patterns that are innate in us until we learn not to do them appropriately because of our culture and society and other institutions that kind of interfere with our natural movement was eye-opening for me. So I can attest to what you're saying.
You wouldn't believe, and that it still remains today, the huge surprise for everybody, because you wouldn't believe, like you said, you're a pretty fit person and you train with some badass guys like former SEALs, and so do I, because not only I have a former SEAL as one of my team instructors. His name is Eric Brown, but I also have trained the SEAL teams multiple times, and actually one of my friend just got retired as Commodore of SEAL team, and first thing he did upon retiring is to come and train with me, which I feel very honored about.
That's awesome.
Um, and I can tell you, one of those sessions I gave them, and we both know how quality these people are, so gentlemanlike and not what you would think, like no big egos, very, very polite, very, very composed, and very tough mentally and physically, very strong, very prepped. But yet I could, without bragging, rapidly, like within seconds, I could expose deficiencies in their movement. And we're not talking about some kind of mysterious technique or some drill, creative drill, improbable creative drill that would never be relevant to anything that they do. We're talking about totally relevant to the kind of operations they do, such as a certain way to get up, say on like a single leg get up while still aiming or pretending we're aiming at a target, or climbing a certain way at a horizontal bar, things that they could have to do, passing obstacles. Um, and this is why I've been working with them, is because we're helping with some of just they're always looking for an edge, and then they're not the only one. So I guess the point is, if those ultra elite people can learn from this method and can learn and can improve some of their most basic natural movements, you bet that all of us can.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And like you said, a lot of people are like, what is that thing? Okay, so MovNat. Okay, what is it? Oh, natural movement. Well, so you mean like jumping, climbing? Like, I can do all these things. And my question is, can you come and see and come and verify? Because that's probably, I bet that it's just an assumption in your head, but that you've actually never really exposed yourself to truly to some of those demands to assess what is your personal level of physical capability, real world physical capability. And today we have a lot of people who train in gyms, and that's highly commendable because most people are physically idle today. So if you train in a gym, it's like kudos to you, because at least you're physically active, trying to keep yourself in shape and capable. But you may have developed an inadequate or inaccurate sense of your own capability by thinking, oh, I'm training my strength, training my muscles, some cardio, some stretches on the side, so I pretty much have everything covered. But what you have not covered is actually his technique. And if you don't try that and test that and assess that, then you don't know if that assumption is based on reality or not. And you might be surprised that it's not.
Yeah, one of the things you highlight regularly, and I really appreciate it, is the difference between, like lifting heavy weights with machines that isolate particular muscle systems, and your system, which trains the whole physical body to be adaptive to the environment it's in and be capable within that same environment. Two completely different ways of operating the world. And I'm wondering, as you've spread the word of your operating philosophy around, what kind of feedback have you gotten from people who have been in more of the industrial mindset gym system of functioning, and then they come into your system and are like, whoa, it's so different?
We have two kinds of reactions.
Okay.
That stem from the same experience. Okay. The experience, number one, that they have is like, okay, I got a lot of work to do. I am off balance. I have problems landing with fluidity or stability or lightness or accuracy or all of that, if just landing safely at all, or climbing there, even though I can do pull-ups, and yet I have trouble climbing on top of that bar. Things like that. There's so many aspects. Or I cannot hold a deep squat, or I cannot hold a narrow base deep squat with my feet together, or I cannot transition from that narrow base deep squat to a sit and back to a deep squat without using my hands.
Mm-hmm.
So these kind of things. So movements that people never think about, movements that are highly practical, but people don't think about them, people don't train them, so they ignore them. Now, when you're exposed to those movements again and you realize that I got a lot of work to do, you have two alternatives. One is be, okay, it bothers me and I want to fix this. I'm going to train that, which is basically realizing that you don't want just the image of fitness,
Yeah.
you want the actual function. You want the actual capability. You just don't want to look fit. You want to be actually fit, means that you can do real things in the real world with your body. You can operate it efficiently. Other reaction is denial. Let me give you an example. It's just to be like, okay, I'm out of my comfort zone and I have to decide if I want to expose myself to being discomfortable again. Whereas if I just stick to my drills and I can decently bench press or heavy squat at the gym and I look good enough, why bother? Why try to do all these little movements that basically, little movements that are actually essentials in many situations and that really are the true expression of real physical capability, not just the image. And some people just want to stick to the image. So the example I'll give you is that literally months after I moved to the US, 3 CrossFitters reached out to me and wanted me to train them. I'm like, sure, I'll do it with pleasure and for free. So we have an appointment at a park. It was in Texas. And these guys show up and 2 of them are like really like buff looking, really jacked. And the other one is like a super muscular guy, but like more lean, smaller frame and all. Anyways, um, before we link up, it started to rain a little, to drizzle. They called me to say, hey, are we still on? I'm like, yeah, why? Well, it's because it's raining. I'm like, okay, yeah, it was not really a problem. And I was very surprised. And then I knew that they were all about competition. They're all about measurement, timing, and competition. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to give them a simple what I call combo. So it's a sequence of movement, and we're going to all do it for time. We're going to measure time, and then we'll see what we can improve on this. If I knew that they had strength, they have stamina. So I thought, okay, maybe there's going to be some technical issues that I can help with. So here's what was the deal. Those playgrounds when you have those swings, and the structure is made of like big pipes, like they look like metal pipes rounded like this. And so you had to jump and grab the top, which was freshly painted, so very kind of slippery, plus a little of a drizzle, a little wet. Find any way you wanted to climb over, jump on the other side. First, before you did that, you had to toss a boulder that was not massive, but it still was heavy enough that you could miss clearing the bar. And once you climb down or jump down, whichever way you wanted, you had to toss it back and do that for 10 times. So basically, it's a very simple sequence, right? Okay, so what happened is that the first person jumps and reaches and tried to do a keeping pull up and didn't have a grip strength to actually hang there, because that was not a regular metal bar that's like, like that small, and you could, use your palms to grip and all that. It's like a more like open hand, almost, rounded grip like that. So find themselves like that and try to tip them, hey, try to lift one of your legs. I'm going to teach you a technique on the go, because I don't want to see you stuck there. There was no amount. He didn't try anything, and then he climbed down and he was done. Quit. The second guy tried to climb over, and I gave him the tips, and he tried to lift his hand, his leg, and then I say, okay, now you do this, you do that. He didn't have a technique. It's very hard to do, even if you could do a muscle up, which I call a power up. It's very hard to do it on a surface like this if you don't have grip strength, because you start sliding, and so you cannot generate power, right? Because your grip strength is not strong enough. So despite my attempts and my tips, he could not manage to get on top once. The third one, which was the shorter guy and slimmer guy, but most determined guy, and I gave him some tips, and he did it, and then he did the whole thing in was like just under 5 minutes or something, to do 10 reps of that little combo. And then it was 30 pounds weight vest on me, and then I did it under, I don't remember exactly, it was like 2 minutes something, or it was just half the time that the other guy had taken. And I did it by just jumping. Well, tossing the stone was easy, but jumping, doing a muscle up right away, and from the top of the muscle up, doing a technique which we call the pop-up, where we use our hips to bounce from the bar that's at hip level. You land on your feet literally on top, right away jump down. I jump down right next to the stone. As I use the rebound, I twist in the air, reposition myself perfectly to grab the stone, toss it, and do that again for 10 times with the extra weight. Okay. This is not about bragging, everybody's got their forte. Some other guy would destroy me on a specific drill or a specific technique or a specific challenge. There's no doubt about it. But here's the takeaway. Is that I ask them, okay, you guys are super fit, right? You represent elite fitness. You do plenty of pull-ups, and clearly the pull-up is involved in clearing that obstacle, which two of you could not even clear once. So my question for you is, should you do more of the same, which is, do you need to do more pull-ups, which you already do tons of pull-ups, or should you approach this differently, have a different training protocols, learning techniques, learning this and acquiring this specific strength and conditioning, because it's not just about technique. If you don't have a grip there, you don't have a grip. So that's literally a physiological adaptation here, not just a technique, because we do that at MovNat too. We train capacity as well, strength and conditioning, not just competency, not just skills. And obviously the answer was, they can't just keep doing the same if they want to be able to do what I showed them the same way, which I know I would have totally been able to train them to reach the same level rapidly. I never got a phone call back from them. So I'm sure other people would react differently, but here's the thing. Most people are happy to be strong and to feel strong and capable in one area of fitness. And once you get there and you believe you're at the top, right, you're fitter than anybody else, so why bother? You don't want to be exposed and brought back to kind of training where you start from from the beginning. That is very typical. This is not uncommon, especially in the fitness industry, and especially with guys, and especially where guys just want to be tough, want to look strong, and mostly that's about their total. Like how much do you bench press, how much do you deadlift. And those are great and they're very important, but they're not the end all and be all, are they? So
we've talked about natural movement within the MovNat system. We're running short on time. So what I'd like to do is invite you back to another time to talk about the movement you are creating around natural living, which movement is a piece of. Would you be willing to come back and talk about that?
Love to. I would love to, brother, for sure.
Cool. So how can
But
people learn
I'll
more
do
about?
that several times. I'll do that 10 times over again if you like.
Uh,
I love what I do. I love to share what I do, and I appreciate that you are interested in my feedback, but also that you are opening your own audience to for those insights to be shared.
Nice. Well, I definitely appreciate you being on the show. So obviously, I already mentioned you have your book, The Practice of Natural Movement. Where can people learn more about your work in general, sign up for a workshop, get certified, find your book? You have an
All
online
right.
program as well.
So the book itself is published by Victory Belt, same publisher as the Paleo Solution by my friend Rob Wolf, or same publisher as Becoming a Supple Leopard by my friend Kelly Stack. And it can be ordered on Amazon. It's, I think the price is at the moment like $35 or so. And it's literally 480 pages. So it's a monumental work. But I want to tell you this about this book. Um, it's zero fat. There's not a single um, all this material, all this information is practical. All this, there's the philosophy. It starts with the manifesto. It's about 20% of the whole book, and that part is about explaining the why. Why is it that we want to train that way? Why is it that matters? Why is it that makes sense? What are the benefits? And then all the rest is really about learning the techniques, learning the training principles, and there are so many techniques. So with those $35, you have an amount of material that's like worth so much more, and that will enable you to educate yourself in a very simple and practical way for many months or even years to come. And otherwise, you can train with my team either in actual workshops. We hold workshops worldwide. We have tons of them in every state in the US, but we also have them in Europe, in Australia, England, South Africa. We've done it in Japan, China, Hong Kong, everywhere, you name it. So we are really operating worldwide, bringing this method to the world. You can learn, you can pass a certification. So when you learn to teach others, you even learn better how to do the movements yourself. It goes deeper into understanding and how to teach those movements. And you can also do online training. So if you want to be trained online because you don't have a lot of time, because you live in a certain place, and you just want to do it online, we have our instructors will have a specific program designed just for you, depending on your personal objectives or special needs.
What's the website?
Excellent question. It's MovNat.com, MovNat. So MovNat.com. MovNat is the official certification for that philosophy and practice, which I've coined as being natural movement 12 years ago now, and it's taking the world over.
Yes, it definitely is. Erwan, thank you so much. I look forward to having you back to talk about the movement within what natural movement was in a larger natural living movement, which you're espousing as well. Definitely encourage folks to check out your book, to do a workshop, train with your trainers, become certified. It's amazing. As I mentioned earlier on, I got certified too. So I've had the honor of training with some of your folks and learning the method. And it's an amazing process to be part of. So thank you for your time. I wish you much success and look forward to having you back on O Radio in the near future.
With great pleasure, brother.
All right,
Thanks, Michael. Likewise.